Prime Minister Justin Trudeau recently paused for 21 seconds when asked to respond to U.S. President Donald Trump using tear gas to clear away many of the protesters for his photo op on Monday. To talk more about it is one of our regular contributors and political reporter, Brian Lilley. Mr. Lilley, how did Mr. Trudeau respond after the 21-second delay?
Well, I've seen Justin Trudeau. I've watched him over many years. I've been covering him since he was a neophyte politician in 2008. In fact, if you want to go far enough back, I sat outside the Trudeau family home waiting for people like Justin Trudeau when his father was dying. Not, one of my finer moments, but one of the things that you have to do in the media when a major political figure is in the condition Pierre Trudeau was in then. So I've known the PM on a certain level for a long time. I've never seen him pause as long as this. 21 seconds, he looked up, he looked down, he clenched his jaw, he gave an audible sigh, and then he started talking about racism, but he didn't talk about what was going on in the United States, which was the question. The whole issue of Donald Trump using security forces to shoot tear gas so that he could walk to the church that was damaged. I believe it's St. John the Evangelist in Washington, D.C., an Anglican church, or Episcopal, as they call it in the United States, that is known as the Church of the Presidents. Every president since James Madison has visited this church, and it was damaged with arson during the protest the other day. Well, Donald Trump walked over, and it was a bit of a bizarre photo op. So he uses tear gas to clear away protesters so that he can walk over, and then just stands there and holds up a Bible. Very strange, but Trudeau didn't touch on any of that. Spoke about Canada, spoke about how we need to learn certain things, how we need to act on certain things. And it's the way he has reacted to difficult issues on, so many fronts. It's not a question of him. It's not a question of his government. He tries to make it about all of us and in lessons that we can learn. To a degree, I understand it. Look, racism is alive and well in Canada. You may not see it. I may not see it, but it is there. Is it the same as the United States? No, it's different, but it is there. And we have our own racism, from Sir Wilfrid Laurier sending agents down to stop black farmers in Oklahoma from going up to settle the prairies. He signed an order in council in 1911 banning black immigrants coming into Canada. I mean, you can go example after example throughout our history. But it was a bizarre reaction, a bizarre pause, and bizarre commentary from Trudeau, because I'm not sure he knows what to do. He knows that he's compromised because of his past actions involving blackface.
So Trudeau didn't have much to say about the Trump photo op with the protesters and the tear gas, but he did have something to say regarding admitting Russia back into the G7 talks, which Trump is in favor of.
He said absolutely not. He's not in favor of that at all, and he cited Crimea, and I've got to support him on this. Look, if you remember, Russia was it became the G8 for a while, right? It wasn't the G7, it became the G8. And then Stephen Harper was famously at a G20 meeting in Australia shortly after Russia annexed Crimea. And Stephen Harper walked up to Putin and said, "I only have one thing to say to you: get out of Ukraine." That was his message. So I'm glad to see that there's a bipartisan stance by Canada on this. This is not a liberal or a conservative thing. This is a Canadian thing. We don't accept Russia's aggression towards Ukraine. And, for people across the prairies, that might mean, it's just because there are so many Ukrainians. Or, more specifically, more recently, a good chunk of the Ukrainian population, Ukrainian immigrant population, has settled in and around Toronto. But I think it's more than that. This is a part of the world that wants to embrace democracy, that relies on support of countries such as Canada and the United States, and we're backing them on that. We don't always take the right stance. I don't think we've taken the right stance when it comes to Hong Kong, because the Trudeau government is afraid of upsetting the rulers in Beijing. But when it comes to Ukraine, Justin Trudeau has done the right thing, and I have to give him credit for it.
Brian, we've seen a lot of the images, a lot of the video of the rioting and looting taking place in the United States. in wake of the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Canadian stars and athletes have spoken out about the racism, not just in the U.S., but Canada as well, including a couple of former big-name CFL stars like Mike Pinball Clemens and Smiling Hank Burris. Now, Pinball actually said there's a reason why he decided to stay in Canada.
Yeah, we've been hearing from all kinds of athletes. A ton of the Toronto Raptors, Fred Van Vliet, Pascal Siakam, the general manager, Masai Ujiri, all of these people speaking out. Even Austin Matthews, who, if you don't know, he's from the Phoenix area. Austin Matthews is a star in the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he's an American. And as he pointed out the other day, a Latino American who's dealt with his own forms of racism, but not quite like this. But, on the Canadian side, Henry Burris, who I used to work with at Bell Media in Ottawa, he was on the TV side, I was on the radio side. And I got to know him in a way outside of football. Loved watching him play for football, except when he was, beating up my Tiger Cats. Loved watching him play. And then got to know him as a man, got to know him as a broadcaster. He's a fantastic man, fantastic broadcaster. And Smiling Hank is angry right now. He's angry at the racism he's seeing. He's angry at images of a man being killed. Many people are surmising simply because he's black. Turns out that the officer who knelt on his neck for 9 minutes had known him for a long time. So is there racism involved? Most likely. Is there a personal beef involved as well? Quite possibly. We're going to have to wait to see why. Regardless, this should not have happened, and it happens too often. And the black community in the United States is speaking out. Henry Burris is speaking out. Pinball Clemens, former Toronto CFL star, never liked him as a player because he was good, but he's a fantastic individual. And he was doing a local Toronto TV interview, and they asked him about the racism in Canada. And he said, look, I stayed in Canada for a reason. And when people would ask me why, and he would say, because if I look to a new venture in the United States, I would have to prove that I was competent because of this racism that is rampant in many parts, not all, but many parts of the United States. He said in Canada, I'd have to prove that I was incompetent. And that's the short version of his answer. So does racism exist here? Absolutely. Is it different? Absolutely. I don't begrudge anybody for speaking out at this. I don't understand the violence and the looting, especially when it comes to a bunch of white kids in Montreal smashing the window of Steve's music store. But as a former Montreal reporter, I can tell you they will riot because it's Tuesday and steal what they can and co-opt any, valid issue that's out there as a reason to riot. And that's what we saw in Montreal, and it's what we've seen in too many places, quite frankly. There is an issue with the murder of George Floyd. There is an issue with racism, but too many people are jumping on it in a way that does dishonor to this man's memory.
Brian, we have not had a regular meeting of Parliament in months, and if the Liberals, NDP, and Green Party have their way, it may not come back until September, despite a spending bill of over $150 billion.
Yeah, I'm reminded of that 50 song, "See You in September," right? The teeny bopper love song of my parents' era. I don't understand this. Yes, I know there's a pandemic on, but we should be able to find a way to have a functioning parliament, and we haven't. For anyone that thinks we have, we don't. Look, the Ontario legislature has been meeting with reduced members present. So all of the parties have agreed to restrict the number of members and keep it proportional. It's not the bare minimum. It's not the minimum caucus. And then independent members show up at will because they don't have a caucus whip to stop them. They've been holding question period. They've been debating legislation. I know this has happened in other provincial legislatures as well. But in Ottawa, at our national parliament, we have this thing where as soon as they start, they dissolve parliament into the committee of the whole. So it's not a regular sitting. The opposition does not have the same tools at their disposal to hold the government account. They do not have normal question period. And the Liberals wanted to keep it this way till September and have just 4 meetings over the summer to debate a spending bill that we're told could be $150 billion. Jagmeet Singh defended this. He was on Question Period over the weekend saying, oh, this has more accountability than regular Parliament. And when pressed on it, said, well, in regular Question Period, I only get 2 questions of 30 seconds each, but here I get 5 minutes. Well, I'm sorry, it's not the Jagmeet Singh show, it's Parliament. And Parliament as a whole has been weakened by this. We are going to find a whole scandal after this. We know there will be problems. Look, we know that there were problems with rolling out the emergency aid at the beginning because I will cut them some slack. They're coming up with proposals and programs in a matter of days or a week or two instead of months to years. And both the NDP and the Conservatives, to a lesser degree the Bloc, made suggestions that improved many of the programs that we see, from the CERB to the wage subsidy to support for small business. All of these things have been improved with opposition not only supporting the government and passing it, but saying, well, hold on, have you thought of this? Now we're being told that the opposition's input isn't welcome. The Prime Minister governs from the steps of Rideau Cottage. He stumbles down each day, gives his news conference, goes back in, and that's it. I'm sorry, answering a few questions from the media, as much as we think that we're incredibly important, Hal, we're not the people's elected representatives in the media. And we do not substitute for members of Parliament. Parliament needs to come back. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has called this unprecedented and unfortunate, to say the least, was his quote.
Brian, the Trudeau government is still looking at banning a long list of rifles and force gun owners to hand them over. I've spoken to a lot of gun owners here in southwestern Alberta. They're not happy about it. Now, you've actually checked out cases where actual gun criminals are being released. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, there's been a couple right here in Toronto in the past week or so because of COVID. Oh, well, we can't keep you in jail. There's COVID. You've got to get out. You get bail. One guy's named Hans Thomas. He's got a career criminal record going back to 2003. Multiple gun charges over and over again. He's been banned from driving, caught driving. He's been banned from possessing any sort of weapon. He's caught driving with a gun in the car or a shotgun in the car. They're never legal guns. He's never gotten his license. He doesn't buy them at Cabela's or Bass Pro Shop or Canadian Tire or your local sporting goods store. He buys them on the black market. And he's been out on bail while he's been caught. So I believe the way it goes, I don't have the full timeline in front of me, but I believe within a year, he was caught and charged on one front, sent to jail, stopped showing up for his weekend because he was only sentenced to serve his time on weekends, stopped showing up, arrest warrant put out, caught again with a shotgun in a car that he's not supposed to be driving, given bail, released, caught again a couple months later in driving another vehicle with a .45 caliber handgun in the car, along with cocaine and meth and all these things. Then there's this woman, Rima Mansour. You may have heard of this case. It got quite the headlines. She was caught with about 25 handguns in the gas tank of a rental car trying to cross between Buffalo and Fort Erie, Ontario. She'd driven down to Tampa, got the illegal guns, brought them out, allegedly drove down to Tampa, bought the illegal guns, and they were mysteriously in the gas tank of her rental car as she came back across the border. She's been in jail since she was busted on this more than a year ago, and she has since been let out. Meanwhile, the government's going hammer and tongs against legal gun owners who have not broken the law, other than Cabinet passed an order declaring them all to be bandits.
Brian, the federal Conservatives are looking at holding debates this month and selecting a new leader in August. Now, who are some of the frontrunners to replace outgoing Andrew Scheer? We're still looking at Peter MacKay and Aaron O'Toole. How about social conservative Leslyn Lewis?
Leslyn Lewis is there's only four. There's Peter MacKay and there is Aaron O'Toole. Those would be considered the front runners. Leslyn Lewis and Derek Sloan are fighting for the social conservative side. And my sense, we don't have any accurate polling of people who have actually bought and paid for their Conservative Party membership. But my sense is that Leslyn Lewis will be doing better than Derek Sloan and is surprising a lot of people who may not necessarily be on the social conservative side of the party, but they're not happy with either O'Toole or MacKay and are looking for someone else to support. So I think she's going to do very well. Peter MacKay, it was his race to run away with, but he's had a series of missteps. And Erin O'Toole has been running a slow and steady as she goes campaign, a bit of a tortoise in the hare, and maybe catching up. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform in the debates. They're June 17th and 18th, and then voting will take place, and I believe the leaders picked August 26th, if I'm going from memory there. But it is towards the end of August. So look, we need Parliament back, and we need an actual Conservative leader, because Andrew Scheer is on his way out. That lessens his hold on caucus. It lessens his importance. He's been doing a decent job, but nobody looks at him as the real leader of the Conservatives anymore, because by the end of the summer he won't be.
It's interesting, though, ever since Andrew Scheer decided he's stepping down as Conservative leader, I've really liked this guy. I thought he's been a lot looser. He's been saying what he means. He's very forthright. Maybe he's got nothing to lose. He figures, you know what, throw caution into the wind. I'm going to say it as I see it, right?
Yeah, there might be something to that in terms of, I've looked at him a few times and said, where was this guy during the election? And look, I've known Andrew Scheer since he was first elected in around 2004. I've been at this a long time, Hal. And I've seen him rise up, and then he kind of froze out for a little bit during the election campaign. Would have been nice to see some of this fire in the belly during the campaign. It was there at times, but not often enough.
Toronto Sun political reporter and one of our regular contributors, Brian Lilley, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you, Hal.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.